I was alone at work. I thought I was safe. Who's there? Show yourself!
Have you ever worked completely alone at night, with no one around to help you if something went wrong? Comment alone if you've ever worked a night shift, because what you're about to hear proves that being alone at work can turn into a nightmare faster than you think. Watch till the end, because each story gets worse. I was 21 years old, home from college for summer break. And for the first time I decided not to move back in with my parents. A friend rented me a spare room near campus for cheap, and I picked up temporary jobs whenever I could. That summer I found something easy: house sitting. Most of the homes were huge, expensive places. I'd water plants, feed pets, and stay in luxury houses while getting paid. So when I accepted a 4-day house-sitting job just outside town, I expected the same thing. But when I arrived, I knew something felt off. The house wasn't big or modern. It was old, small, and surrounded by endless fields of tall grass. No nearby neighbors. Just darkness and silence stretching in every direction. The couple who owned it seemed nice, but before leaving they gave me a strange warning. "Everything's normal during the day," they said. "Just be more alert at night. Some people have been hanging around recently." They laughed it off like it was nothing. But the way they said it stuck with me. That first night, the silence was unbearable. No traffic, no voices, just the house creaking and wind pushing through the grass. I almost left, but nothing happened, so I told myself I was just overthinking. The next evening felt calmer. I watched TV, trying to relax. Around 8 p.m., I stretched and casually pulled back the curtain to look outside. That's when I saw him. A man standing in the field behind the house, staring directly at it. Froze. He didn't move. He just stood there watching. I closed the curtain, my heart racing. After a minute I looked again. He was still there. And then I noticed something worse. He wasn't alone. There were shapes behind him. 3, maybe 4 more people, half hidden by the tall grass. I couldn't tell where the shadows ended and the people began. I messaged the homeowners in panic. They replied, "They won't do anything. Just ignore them." They even said I could call the police. But it sounded like they didn't want me to. Eventually the figures disappeared. But I couldn't sleep. Hours passed. Every sound felt louder. Every creak felt closer. And I heard footsteps on the roof. Low, heavy, moving toward the front door. And then there was a knock. I was alone in that house, surrounded, and the owners already knew what was coming. Part 2 reveals what happened when I opened the door, and why I never house sat again. The knocking came again, louder this time. Not hurried, not angry, just slow and heavy. Like whoever was outside knew I had nowhere to go. I backed down the hallway, my shoes barely lifting off the floor so the boards wouldn't creak. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was the homeowners calling. I hesitated, then answered. The man spoke in a calm voice that didn't match the situation at all. "Everything's okay," he said. "You just need to walk outside and leave." I told him someone was knocking on the door. There was a pause. Then he repeated himself slowly. "Walk out. They won't hurt you." That's when I realized something was wrong. He wasn't surprised. He already knew they were there. Outside, the knocking grew harder. I heard movement in the grass around the house. More than one person shifting positions. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the man on the phone anymore. I asked him what was happening. "Just go," he said again. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the door. If I stayed, I didn't know what would happen. If I left, I didn't know what I was walking into. Finally, the knocking stopped. I took a step toward the door. Nothing. I unlocked it with shaking hands and pulled it open. Two men stood on the porch. Both were older, rough-looking, with blank expressions on their faces. They didn't smile. They didn't speak. They just watched me. Behind them, I could hear others moving through the tall grass, circling the house. I stepped outside. The cold air hit my lungs like ice. The men didn't move aside or block me. They simply stood there as I walked past them, eyes following every step. I got into my car and drove away without looking back. Once I was a few miles down the road, I tried calling the homeowners again. The call wouldn't go through. They had blocked me. I sat there in a gas station parking lot for almost an hour, shaking, trying to make sense of what just happened. I never called the police. Part of me felt like I shouldn't. Like this was something the owners wanted hidden. I don't know what those people planned to do if I had stayed inside. I don't know why the owners were so sure they wouldn't hurt me. All I know is, they wanted me out of that house. And whatever was supposed to happen there wasn't meant for me. That was the night I learned being alone at work can be deadly. But what happened next was even worse. Part 3 takes place during a night shift in a snowstorm. And the man I met on the road wasn't supposed to be there. Years later, I took a job working for the city. During winter, most of my shifts were spent driving a snowplow through empty streets at night. I actually preferred it. No traffic, no people, just quiet roads and falling snow. One night, a heavy storm rolled in. I clocked in around 10 p.m., grabbed my route, and headed toward an older neighborhood on the edge of town. The roads there were narrow and barely wide enough for 2 cars to pass. Snow was piling up fast, and visibility was terrible. I had been plowing for almost 2 hours when I suddenly had to slam on the brakes. A dark red car was stopped in the middle of the road. No hazard lights. No movement. Waited. Nothing happened. Thinking the driver might be stuck, I parked the plow and walked toward the car through knee-deep snow. Before I reached it, the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Something about him felt wrong immediately. He was painfully thin, his hair wild, his face drained of color. His eyes were wide and unblinking, like he hadn't slept in days. I asked if he was okay or needed help. He muttered something I couldn't hear over the wind. I leaned closer and asked again. This time he said one word. "Leave." I told him I was just trying to help. He suddenly shouted, "Leave." I backed up and returned to my truck. As soon as I closed the door, he jumped into his car and drove off. I sat there for a minute, uneasy. I considered calling the police, but I didn't have his plate number, and I convinced myself he was just having a breakdown or something. So I kept working. About 30 minutes later, I rounded another corner and saw the same red car. Stopped again, in the middle of the road. This time there was only one house nearby. Waited. Honked the horn. Still nothing. I radioed dispatch and called the police to report a suspicious vehicle. Then I stepped out to check the plate. But when I looked inside, the car was empty. No driver. No movement. Just snow collecting on the windshield. Then I heard it. Scream. It came from the house beside the road. Froze listening. Then I heard it again, clearer this time. A woman yelling for help. I saw the front door standing wide open, snow blowing inside. Something clicked in my head. The strange man. The empty car. The open house. I ran toward the door while staying on the phone with dispatch. Inside, the house was dark except for a light upstairs. The screaming was louder now. I charged up the stairs and saw him. The same man from the road was slamming his body against a bedroom door, trying to break it down. I was alone in that house, with a man who had completely lost control. And there was a knife on the floor beside him. Part 4 reveals what happened when I tried to stop him, and what the police later discovered. For a split second, I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, trying to understand what I was seeing. The man was throwing his entire body into the bedroom door, shoulder first again and again, while a woman screamed from the other side. The door frame was already cracked, wood splintering with every hit. I shouted at him to stop. He didn't even look at me. It was like I wasn't there. I ran forward and grabbed his jacket from behind, yanking him away from the door. He spun around so fast I almost lost my grip. His face was twisted with rage, eyes glassy and unfocused. He tried to swing at me. We stumbled into the hallway wall, slipping on snow that had blown in from the open front door. He was stronger than he looked, fighting like he had nothing to lose. I managed to push him down and pin him to the floor, using my weight to keep him still. That's when I saw it. A knife lay a few feet away, near the end of the hallway. My stomach dropped. He must have dropped it when he attacked the door. If I had arrived even a minute later, he might have reached it. The man kept struggling, shouting nonsense words that didn't make sense, just angry sounds mixed with laughter. I yelled for the woman to stay locked in her room and not come out. After a minute, his strength faded. He went limp beneath me, breathing heavily, eyes still wide open. The police arrived moments later. They pulled him off the floor, cuffed him, and led him out into the snow. The woman came out of the bedroom crying. Her door was cracked nearly in half. She told them he had broken into the house and chased her upstairs. She locked herself in just before he reached her. Later, I found out the house belonged to his ex-wife. Apparently, he used to live there before losing everything in the divorce. Somewhere along the way, he lost his mind too. The officers didn't give me many details after that. What stuck with me most was something they said quietly as they walked him outside. "He's been circling the neighborhood all night." That meant the first time I saw him, he was already hunting. I couldn't stop thinking about the moment when he told me to leave. It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. If I had called the police the first time I saw him, maybe it wouldn't have reached that point. That night changed how I felt about working alone. Snow, darkness, and empty streets can hide a lot more than you think. 2 stories down. And both happened while working alone at night. But the final one was the closest I've ever come to disappearing. Part 5 begins with a late-night delivery, and a stranger who refused to let me leave. After years of driving and city work, I switched to overnight delivery. It paid better, and most nights were simple. Pick up packages, drop them off, and go home. No boss watching over you. No coworkers. Just you, your car, and quiet streets. That's what I liked about it. Most of the deliveries were houses, but every once in a while I'd get sent to an apartment complex far outside town. On this night I started around 11 p.m. The first few stops were normal. Then I got one that was almost 40 minutes away. When I reached the address, my stomach sank. The building was old, half-lit, and looked like it should have been condemned years ago. Only a few windows glowed in the darkness. I grabbed the package and walked around to the side entrance where the delivery room should be. No code. No instructions. So I walked back to the main door. Locked too. I sighed, planning to leave the box near the entrance, when someone spoke behind me. "How's it going?" I turned around and saw a tall man in a thick winter jacket. Gray beard. Late 40s or early 50s. He looked normal enough, but there was something off in the way he stood too close. I stepped aside, thinking he wanted inside. But he didn't move. He asked how my night was going. I answered quickly and said I was in a hurry. As I walked back to my car, he followed me, still talking, asking about my job like I hadn't just told him I needed to leave. I got in and drove off without another word. A few minutes later, I pulled over to organize my next deliveries. As I signaled to rejoin the road, a car slowed down behind me and stopped, right behind my bumper. I didn't wait to see who it was. I merged back into traffic and kept going, telling myself it was just bad timing. 15 minutes later, I reached the next address, a quiet suburban house. I parked and walked up the driveway with the package. That's when headlights appeared at the end of the street. Car rolled slowly toward me and stopped behind mine. My blood went cold. I turned just in time to see the man from the apartment building staring at me through his windshield. Ran. He jumped out of his car and sprinted toward mine, blocking the front as I tried to reverse. His face wasn't friendly anymore. He was screaming words that didn't make sense, pounding on my window with both fists. I backed up hard and swerved around him just as he ran back to his car. I called 911 while driving, my hands shaking on the wheel. The operator told me to keep moving and give my location. For a moment, I thought he was still behind me. Then he disappeared. I met an officer minutes later. The police thought that was the end of it. But Part 6 reveals why that man was really waiting for packages, and what they found when they tracked him down. When I finally pulled up beside the police car, my legs felt weak getting out. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting that man's headlights to appear again out of nowhere. I told the officer everything, about the apartment building, the strange conversation, the car stopping behind me, and how he chased me at the last house. The officer listened quietly, then nodded like he already had a bad feeling about it. "What was the first address?" he asked. I gave it to him. Turns out, the package I had tried to deliver at that apartment complex was important. The police traced the order and found something unsettling. The man had ordered that package himself, using a fake apartment number. But he used his real name. That's how they found him. The next day, officers went back to the complex. And unbelievably, he was still there. Not inside an apartment. Not visiting anyone. He was standing outside waiting. Waiting for another delivery. They took him in for questioning. According to the police, he didn't have a clear reason for what he did. He wasn't stealing packages. He wasn't robbing houses. He wasn't even targeting me personally. He was just waiting for drivers to show up. When they asked him why, his answers made no sense. His words were scrambled, jumping from one idea to another, like his thoughts were broken into pieces. The officers described him as mentally unstable, someone who had no real plan, only urges. That answer didn't make me feel any better. Because it meant what happened to me wasn't planned. It was random. If I hadn't run, if my car hadn't started, if I hadn't called the police, there's no telling what he would have done. I quit overnight deliveries a week later. Not because of him, but because of what I learned. When you work alone at night, you don't just deal with empty streets. You run into people who don't follow rules. People who don't think normally. People who don't need a reason. It's easy to assume danger looks obvious, like masks or weapons or shouting. But sometimes it looks like a man asking how your night is going. Sometimes it looks like a quiet street. Sometimes it looks like a delivery that seems completely normal. And by the time you realize something's wrong, you're already alone with it. 3 jobs, 3 nights, 3 moments where I realized how close I came to not making it home. Part 7 brings everything together. And the one lesson that connects all these stories. It took years for me to understand what all 3 of those nights had in common. Different jobs, different towns, different people, but the same situation. I was alone. The house in the fields, the snow-covered streets, a quiet delivery route. Each time there was no coworker nearby, no manager to call over, no one watching out for me except myself. And each time someone else knew that. The couple with the farmhouse knew people came at night, and still sent me there without explaining the truth. The man in the snowstorm knew the streets were empty, and used that to hunt someone he believed was alone. The delivery stranger knew I worked nights, and waited where no one would see him. That's the part that still scares me. Not the footsteps, not the knocking, not even the screaming. It's how normal it all looked at first. A simple house-sitting job. Broken down car. Friendly stranger near an apartment door. Every situation felt harmless. Until it wasn't. I don't think any of them were accidents. They all relied on one thing. Silence. Silence in empty neighborhoods. Silence in snowstorms. Silence in the early hours of the morning when most people are asleep. If there's one lesson I took from those nights, it's this. Being alone at work doesn't mean you're safe. Means you're unseen. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If someone tells you not to worry, question why. And if you ever feel like you're being watched, trust that feeling. I still work late sometimes. But I don't ignore my instincts anymore. Keep my phone ready. I share my location. And I don't stop to help strangers the way I used to. Because I learned something the hard way. Not every threat looks like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a house that needs watching. Sometimes it looks like a car stuck in snow. Sometimes it looks like a man asking how your night is going. And sometimes, it looks like a job you thought was safe. If you've ever worked alone at night, this could have been you. Tell me in the comments. Would you have opened the door? Would you have helped the man in the snow? Would you have stopped for the stranger? And if you want more true stories like this, you already know what to do. 'Cause the next story might sound even more normal.